Mr. Barr here for your e-learning lesson of the day. Yesterday, we covered what it takes to be an entrepreneur. We looked at each one of these individually, talked about those. Then I talked about what they do in the economy, 40%. Where do you get your financing from? Family, friends. You could also get it from banks. They make up 600 billion in annual sales, broke it down by employees. Talked about whether you create something new or improve something. Looked at some of the risk that go into it, and today we start with small business basics. This is the one that's usually a little bit of a shocking definition, somewhat. Small business is an independent business with fewer than 500 employees, which seems rather large. But in the business definition of a small business, it's 500 or less. And that's why you can see that a lot of businesses will fall into this category. Small business ownership. Usually the owner is the manager, operates in one or very few locations, usually serve a small market, and they're not dominant in their field. 50% of U.S. workers work at small business. So what we're looking at here is what we've talked about in the past. The owner has to wear many hats in order to make this business go. The one or very few locations is basically telling you that it's not some big franchise. It's not some organization that's running in multiple locations. Usually when you're looking at growth, which is essential to a business, and we've talked about that, growth would be, you could grow your business within, or your growth is, okay, I have my Carlisle market established. Once I get that established, now let's move one to Breeze, or let's move one to Centralia. And that's when you start to get more locations. Usually they serve a small market. So basically what they're doing there is they're saying that's kind of a niche. They find what their niche is. They find who likes their stuff and they serve those people. And again, growth would be once you have that established, now we can say, okay, now that we have this market satisfied, how do we expand by finding new markets? Last thing there, it says not dominant in its field, basically telling you that it's probably not the big name company. And I'll use like Ski. Ski is not Coke and Pepsi, but it serves its market. It's not in that many locations. The owner is not the probably manager here, I'm guessing at this point. But again, it's not dominant in its field, but it does good. And if you look at Ski, they have started to expand their market on locations. They've shifted who they're selling to when they start adding different types of flavors. And this is a good visualization of what a small business should do. The diversity of the ownership. Women own a quarter of these businesses, which we talked about, I think, chapter 2 or something about that. Where we talked about 50% of the jobs are now women. So now we're talking about a quarter of the ownership as women. And again, if you rewind to 40, 50 years ago, you never thought this would have happened. This is the change in the country. It's the change in the world that women are powerful. Women are in roles of power, and it's good. They can get out there and do just as much as a man. 16% have African American, Asian American, or Hispanic American. Again, this is the American side of things. Our country is diverse. We don't just have one set of people that are in charge. We have women in charge. We have different races in charge, which makes a diverse workforce, which creates other issues that we've talked about, but it also creates diversity in thinking, which makes us successful as business owners because we have a lot of different people thinking different ways. Typically, the owners are 40 years old or more. And to me, that's kind of important because I physically, personally, don't like when you have super young people in charge because to me, they lack the real world experience to lead a business. I get frustrated on this when I watch sporting events when a 35-year-old coach wins the NFL Super Bowl or whatever he is now, because I don't feel like they make their way up through the system enough to really understand what they're doing, I feel this way in education at times when they're super young administrators or superintendents, because I feel like there's a certain necessary evil to going through each phase of a business, being a low-end guy, working your way up through the system for 10, 15 years, so you truly understand what you're getting yourself into when you take over a business. But then again, like I said, you could start a business at 21 if you want, 18 for all that matter. 30% have finished some college, which you'd think that number would be higher, because you would think if a person is going to lead a business, they probably have more than 30% of the time have college experience. But when you're talking small business, I've used the example of construction in the past and places like that, where a lot of those guys start working at 18 for a construction company, work their way up through the company, and then eventually branch off and start their own and have never seen college. And there's a lot of different types of fields like that. So that makes it somewhat unsurprising, but still surprising. Some common types broken down in a graphical view here. You got all the different types here. You got the different breakdowns here. I'm not going to go through each one of these. You guys can kind of look at those. But if I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in creating a small business, I might want to look at this because of competition, right? So if I have only 1.3 are information, publishing, and broadcasting, maybe I say that's a smaller market that I could penetrate compared to 17 or 13% is retailing, 13% is construction. Now you're getting to a little bit more of a competitive market, which might be a little tougher for you to introduce yourself into. What is the advantage of being a small business? To me, this is the greatest advantage, is you have the ability to meet individual customer needs because you're not such a big company where you know everybody on an individual name basis. When your clients and customers call, you know them, you know who they are, you can talk to them in a first name basis. You can provide them more than what a bigger company would do. Or, like I said before, you provide something super unique that other big companies just don't want to do because it's too much work for them. They're more in the mass production side of things. So find out what customers want, find it if it's unique, and if you can create that, that creates a small business advantage for you. Some common reasons for failure would be not keeping adequate records, not enough money to start, which we've talked about, get more than you actually need, lack of management experience, lack of experience with that type of business, which hopefully is not the case, because in the past I've said if you're going to start a new business, you probably want to have some experience in that business, and you shouldn't be probably starting something completely new. But like I said, this does happen because of the innovation we talked about. Not controlling operating expenses. The cost of doing business gets too expensive, like we talked about yesterday, with inflation going up like crazy. I budgeted for this, and now all of a sudden I'm out of money because I didn't budget for all this inflation, which goes back to startup money. Make sure you have way more than you need. Poor location of the business. Sometimes businesses just fail because of where they are. Either that market doesn't exist where they are, the building or location of their business is not conducive to getting people in the door, or something along those ways. Failure to manage credit offered to customers. This is when you are getting big enough where you allow customers to buy on credit. You can't keep track of it. You don't know who owes you. Therefore, you're not getting your money. You got to get the money in order to pay the bills. That's probably going to be a good stopping point for today. Watch this video. If you didn't watch the video from yesterday, watch both of those. You are supposed to email me upon completion of this, and I will see you guys on Monday.